Live. Hello, Facebook.
Hey,
We have
Facebook.
Instagram Live up and running. Hi, Instagram. Hello. If you're on Instagram, pop over to Facebook Live at Apollo Performance to join the discussion. And of course, we're here on Zoom. Before we introduce our guest panelists for this episode, I want to give a few reminders. Throughout the episode, you're going to see Melissa and me looking around, perhaps talking to the sky, and we might be on mute and you see our mouths moving. It's because we're also trying to field people over from Instagram to join us on Facebook and participate. We're monitoring the chat and we're making sure we get your questions answered throughout this discussion. So we're not daydreaming or flying off into nowhere. We're actually trying to pull people into this conversation because the more people we can talk to today, the better. And we want to make these conversations accessible. So please contribute. This is about sharing perspective with open hearts and minds. No question is silly, but we certainly want to hear your thoughts, but we want to keep this safe and respectful space for people to answer anything. And so pop your comments in the chat, your questions in the chat, and we're going to make sure that Kristen answers those today for you.
So, without further ado, we want to introduce our expert guest today, Kristen Koskinen. And just so you know, I'm going to stumble over that name. I'm probably going to call you Kristen a whole lot, but I do want to make sure that people know exactly who you are because you're an extremely busy lady who's doing some great work out there. And we're just really, really happy to have you here today. So Kristen Koskinen is a registered dietitian who grew up dancing. Her interest in nutrition began when she was in her teens and danced in a pre-professional ballet company. There was a lot of talk among dancers about diets and weight loss, and we all know that that is a huge thing here in the dance community, but not much understanding about nutrition to maximize performance or the disordered eating that often results from dieting. So now she is a resource for dancers and those who support them. Kristen owns a private practice where she offers nutrition counseling with a focus on performance nutrition. Performance nutrition. I cannot wait to dig into exactly what that terminology means. She incorporates functional aspects of food in her approach to help artistic athletes at all levels. Artistic athletes, that's another term I can't wait to dig into. Artistic athletes at all levels. Her integrative approach recognizes that nutrition isn't just about food you eat. It's important to take many factors into consideration, including environment, cultural influences, social norms, and body image, especially when working with dancers. She's an active member of the International Association for Dance Medicine and Science, Academy of Nutrition and Diet, is it dietetics, Kristen?
Yeah.
And is a founding member of Dance Medica. She is regularly invited to speak on topics related to dancer health, including industry-specific podcasts, Dance Well, and Bendy Bodies. Kristen's a frequent contributor to media, including Dance Magazine, Point Magazine, Pop Sugar, HuffPost, Shape, Oprah, Live Strong, Healthline, Cooking Light, Forbes, MSN, NBC, and Today.com. You can find her on social media at her website, eatwellpros.com. Kristen, oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here with us.
All hail.
I know. I mean, and you came with this beautiful set that just makes me so hungry for some really good food. But before we dig into all of that delicious food you have around you, this is a much needed conversation for our youth and our adults who have really been conditioned with the mindset that is harmful, especially around food and dieting and weight. So tell us what drives you to continue to do this very important work in the dance industry.
Yeah, thank you. So as you mentioned, I grew up dancing, and the diet culture was very strong, and I was pretty fortunate to escape my dance career without an eating disorder. However, in college, the stresses of life and everything hit in, and I did end up with a full-blown eating disorder. And they're no joke. They're really no joke. And there really, at that time, were no ready answers to get help. And so I had to figure it out myself, was really the way it turned. And it was a degree in nutrition and a lot of other things. And so I've taken my personal experience and brought that to the world. And so I was working in dietetics. And as my life turns out, I also have two daughters who dance. So in the interim, when I was kind of hoping a lot of the stuff that I'd figured out, the dance world would have figured out too, it hadn't quite so much. We're making some strides, but we're not quite there. And so for me, it's really important for me to be who I needed when I was that dancer, when I was that kid, when I was that college student. And as a mom and a parent and a patron of the arts, I want to support what I love so much. And I want dancers to have everything they want from their careers, whether it's just dancing around with wands and tutus, or if they go, if they become a commercial dancer or take it professionally or to college, whatever it is. But if your body breaks down or your mind breaks down, you're not going to get there. So I want to be part of that circle, that wheel where we all have all these spokes, we all participate to help where I can. And
I love that. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
And this is another person who's really diving in and seeing a pain point in our industry and doing something about it. And it's so important because we find it interesting with so many of these topics, industries outside of the dance community. They're adopting these thought processes and this information pretty easily. Dance is a little bit slower to adapt all kinds of information. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's such a hard concept for us to grasp about nutrition specifically?
Dance, I come from a ballet background, so most of my conversation is going to be ballet driven. We are very tradition. There's a lot of tradition that comes with it, and breaking tradition can feel like an insult. It can feel like we're hurting someone's feelings or telling someone they're wrong, or maybe introducing shame that shouldn't, when it's not about that. It's, hey, when we know better, we do better. But changing some of the tradition, and even the patrons, if we're looking at ballet, have expectations that they've been conditioned to expect, whether it's the thin body, whether it's all these things. And what we need to recognize, even within that tradition, is the tradition has changed whether we recognize it or not. So like with body image, it hasn't always been this, willowy, lithe figure. That was something that came in during a period of time. And now it's become not just thin, but ripped, shredded. How muscular do you look while still being, fitting inside a certain, size box or tutu. And so that tradition makes it hard. And I think sometimes the psychology, it can be really hard if we've taught someone something and then find out it's wrong.
It's a lot of guilt that we shoulder. And I'll say this from being on this journey of evolution that I'm on right now, looking back at some of the thought processes that I've had about other things, and the way that's carried over into the way that I teach children or live my life, even with my own kids, and finding out that there's maybe a better way. It's a lot of guilt to unpack, right? Sometimes. And so I think we have to realize, and you can tell me your thoughts on this, but whatever has been done up to this point is okay. And I think Melissa Lee said this last week. However, now that we know that there is a better way, and now that we have the information, and it is scientific and it is evidence-based, and we have a responsibility from this point forward to do better. And I think that's what this series is all about, and it certainly applies to nutrition as well.
100% yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to dive right in. Dancers or artistic athletes, which we love that term. We say that at Apollo, dancers are artists and athletes, and we 100% believe that. They're active, especially at the competitive level. And again, this conversation applies to any activity and any sport, but we're relating it to dancers. And specifically, I'm going to talk with this question about competitive dancers, because I think that's a whole nother level of rigor that they're taking on in their lives. But this applies to anybody, any dancers or any youth or children or anybody really. Their bodies require a certain amount of food to be able to sustain the rigorous schedules they uphold. And I'm not just talking about their dance schedule. I'm talking about dance on top of technique and strength training, on top of school, on top of the social pressures that they have, and just their family life and their responsibilities in their homes, right? And that's a lot to juggle for kids, and it seems to be increasingly hard for them to juggle those types of schedules. We constantly hear about them watching what they eat, though, and them being concerned about how much they're eating, and people having these mentalities that oh, I can't eat that, or I already ate this much today, I can't eat more. Should we be counting calories or not? What is your perspective on that? And is it really that simple?
Well, it's really not. The answer is it's really not that simple. Yeah. So I'll start with the idea of calories. A lot of people, that's a little bit of a nebulous term. And so a calorie is a measure of energy. Just like when we look at the thermostat, a degree is a measure of energy. We don't see little degrees marching around. We don't have little calories marching around. It's just a measurement. And so when we talk about calories, all calories are the same, in the fact that the way we measure calories, just like we use a thermometer to measure, I'm pointing to my thermostat on the wall, just like we use a thermostat to measure the degrees of temperature, we use calories to measure how much energy, how much we can raise the temperature of water. So the scientific, I'm going to avoid as much scientific jargon as possible to keep this really straightforward, but the way we measure calories is we use something in a lab called a bomb calorimeter. Basically, you burn the food, and however much it raises the temperature of a particular amount of water, that's how many calories are in the food. That's it. That's how we measure it. And so when we talk about calories, one thing that people don't know is they get real caught up in it because, it's labeling, or it's how many they saw in a chart, or what their MyFitnessPal or my Fitbit says. But calories, it was that one food or a collection of foods on that one day that were measured in that bomb calorimeter. When we look at the calorie count on a food, it can vary by as much as 20% one way or the other. A lot of people don't know that either. So even if you're looking and you are trying to count calories, you may not have an accurate count. We do not have a device on our arm. If you're wearing a FitnessPal, it really doesn't read how many calories you're burning. That gives you a false sense. We don't have some system in our body that tells us how many calories we're burning. To find out how much energy you use, you'd have to go to a lab and sit in a special machine, not the bomb calorimeter, to find out how many you use. So even the idea of how many, so calories are a real thing. They're a measurement of energy. Counting them is can be real challenging because we don't know the exact number of calories in our food, and we really don't know the exact number of calories we're actually using in a certain day.
What is it that dancers need to be more concerned about in terms of what they're putting in their body? So what is that thing? How do they know they're getting enough? What is, or any athlete for that matter, how do they know what to put in their body?
Sure. Well, that it varies by dancer. And the more, as little people, as babies know what to eat, right? They start off, if you've ever seen a baby eat, or a toddler, they eat, and when they've had enough, they push away the bottle, the breast, the food, the whatever. And if you keep shoving it at them, they're going to knock it on the floor, dump the bowl on their head. There'll be a response. Your body, we tend to override those cues when we start to become too dialed into right, wrong, good, bad, enough, and ignore the cues of what we're really eating. When we talk about, I think to make clear on calories, we say a lot about calories in, calories out, especially on the internet. So there are a lot of accounts that'll say, it's this simple, move more, eat less, and you'll get it. Yep. We've been hearing that in the medical community for a long time, and it clearly hasn't worked. When we talk about calories, a lot of people are talking about calories. We need to know why are we talking about them? Is it because you need to know how much energy to fuel yourself? Or are you talking about how many to use or burn or consume because you really want to lose weight, which typically means you want to lose fat? So sometimes we have to ask your why. So that's the first thing. Are we asking why in terms of how much we need to fuel ourselves, or are people saying what's the maximum I can have because I want to lose weight or I don't want to gain weight? And so they're kind of two sides of that same calorie.
Yeah. And we have some people on Instagram chiming in right now. Stress makes me eat more. And so when you have these kids who are juggling these really full schedules, and it's really more than any person should handle at one time. But when they're juggling all of these pressures, some people are stress eating. I know I do that. So, right. How do we mitigate that? And how do we make kids more aware that they're doing that without creating these toxic body image issues?
Right. Yeah. Stress eating is a very real thing. And in part because here's what we need to understand about stress. So your body, and about our bodies, generally speaking, our bodies are brilliant. They are designed to live and to no matter what stupid things we do to them, to continue to live through it. And we throw a lot of stuff at our bodies all the time. And the body's designed to survive. And so when stress comes on, it starts a hormonal cascade. And the thing about your body is it doesn't know the difference between the stress of I have a lot of homework, or I got a nasty email, or social media is freaking me out, or I had a bad turn day, or I'm being chased by a lion, or I don't know if I can pay the bills. All those stresses, it reads as I need to fight this or run away from it. So that fight or flee. What happens is our body gets ready to fight or to flee. And so it starts, and we have a series of hormones that kick into place. One of those hormones you may have heard of is called cortisol, and it comes from the adrenal glands. Cortisol's job is to get you ready to go. We also feel that before we go on stage, right? That kind of feeling, and it can be very effective. Cortisol is great. It gets you ready to run. It gets you ready to perform, okay? Because what it does is it makes your blood vessels tight, so your blood pressure goes up. That can help you to move faster. It also helps your body to make sugar, blood sugar, because you need a burst of sugar to go. It gets that sugar from other sources in your body, it's a process called gluconeogenesis. Gluco is sugar, neo is new, genesis is to make. So it makes new sugar, and your body can do that from protein. And so it's going to grab some protein, which we really don't want it to do. And it's going to grab some protein to bring those sugar levels up. Now, when the stress is over, ideally, things come down, we can relax, but our blood sugar may drop too. So you may notice after that performance, okay, everything's come down, and now I'm famished and I really want to eat. That's your blood coming around and saying, whoops, had a big drop, need to feed it, bring the sugars back up. And your body knows when it needs sugar, and it'll kind of crave it. If you're at home and you're experiencing stress and it goes up and down, your body might say, oh, I need more food because I'm feeding this stress response. So that can be part of that whole stress eating thing.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. And so again, just to recap what she's saying, Kristen, I'm hearing you say, ask why we want to count calories. If that's a topic and if that's a question on your mind, what is your motivation for wanting to count calories? And also be aware of the cues of when you're hungry versus when it's a stress related, when you're wanting to eat because you're stressed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're turning because, you're feeling that hunger because of stress, really bringing in some of those mindfulness techniques that we hear Ashley Lowry talk about, and others can be exceptionally helpful. So that can help in terms of lowering that stress. You may also notice after a time of stress that you get sick, like right after performance season, and then people kind of crash. That's because those adrenal glands burn through a lot of vitamin C too, okay? So you need vitamin C to burn through to support the adrenal glands. But then if you're not supporting it in your diet and bringing in enough, well, your body doesn't have enough for the immune system. Again, that stress response, run, fight, flee is the number one priority for the body. Everything else will take a second seat if what it thinks it needs to do is escape the lion, which maybe I had a bad turn day or stressed out about the election.
Yeah, a lot of lions out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lions.
Yeah.
Out there.
So one more question, and then I know Melissa's going to pull in some comments and questions from our viewers too. What are some calorie counting myths that you see, especially as it pertains to dancers? What are some myths that you want to address?
Okay, let's hit it. All calories are the same. I think by this point, we know common sense wise that let's say 100 calories in this egg are not the same as say 100 calories in some of the chocolate bars or 100 calories of celery, right? We know that all those calories, because we're just not eating calories, we're eating food, and the food is calories are just energy. But the energy format that comes from here or those eggs is going to be different, and our bodies are going to respond differently.
Right.
So when you see someone say a calorie is a calorie is a calorie, in that bomb calorie, when we talk about, it's just like a degree is a degree is a degree. That is absolutely true. However, what people most often are thinking about when they're talking about calories is dieting and how calories impact losing weight. So I'm going to talk there. And then if people want to talk about more about how many calories to eat or how much energy and calories as fuel, we'll get there in a second. Yep. So here's the thing. A lot of people think about calories. Calories are a really easy measurement, and people like them. And we can put them here, and we can put them in MyFitnessPal, and we can do all these things, and they feel really good because it feels like we can control them. It also feels like that's the energy in component. The energy out is if I work out harder, work out more, burn more calories, do all the things, then I can override this calorie in, calorie out. What most people don't get is most of the calories you use come from staying alive. It's called your basal metabolic rate. How much energy your kidneys use, your brain, your liver, your heart to beat, your lungs to breathe. And you can't control those things. That is outside your control. And it's the number one energy burner in your body. So we're going to call that your BMR, basal metabolic rate. That varies depending on your age, your gender, how much muscle you have. But let's say it hovers around 1,500 calories, okay? That's you lying in bed, doing nothing, not even reading, lying in bed, 1,500 calories. So now people say, well, just decrease your calories. Well, that works once. It's going to work one time. So that one time you go on a diet and you cut your calories and you lose weight, and you're like, oh, but it works. That was the one time it's going to work. It's not going to work again because the calories in, calories out, that's an equation. But what happens is the calories in and the calories out are not independent. They don't operate separate of each other. When you lower the calories in, this calories out from your basal metabolic rate, that energy that your body is doing, it goes down too, because your body is smart and it wants to stay alive. And if you're not bringing in enough food, the body starts to pick up on that and it says, whoa, I better slow down. I'm going to lower my body temperature. I'm going to slow down my metabolic processes because I'm only getting this much. Maybe I only need this much. Who knows? We don't really know how the mitochondria think. But when the calorie levels come down, so does the basal metabolic rate. Now we can bring our calorie rate down pretty fast, right? We can do that really quickly. When this rate comes down over here, this basal metabolic rate, all that energy you need to stay alive, it does not go up so fast. So once you bring that down, it's going to stay here for a while. It doesn't do this up and down thing. This calories in, calories out, we can play with that all the time. So now, now we went from, let's say, 1,500 basal calories. Let's say we brought it to 100. Or 1,000 basal calories because we cut 500 calories a day, because what the rules say is if you cut 500 calories a day, you'll lose a pound a week, right? 500 calories times 7 days, they're 3,500 calories and a pound of fat. And so that's what the logic says. Over a week, you'll lose a pound. But people hit this thing called a plateau. And that plateau is when this body weight came down and that 500 calories a day, it's not working anymore. So now what do you do? Well, I guess I'm going to have to cut more calories, right?
No.
No.
Oh, well, I know. I'll exercise more. Well, you can try that. But when you've brought that energy level down to here, your performance suffers. And when you bring that energy level down here, you're at increased risk for injury. And when you've brought that energy down here, you've changed your hormones. So you've done all this other stuff. Because when that body came down here and said, I better slow down, it slowed down all kinds of things. It slowed down the hormones that keep your bones strong. It slowed down its repair rate because, again, your body wants to survive. So it's going to concentrate on all the things it needs to survive. And your feet after class, your muscles after class don't qualify as much as your kidneys, your liver, your lungs, your brain.
Right.
So it's gonna budget that energy that it gets.
So what is the answer for that? Like, what do you, because, I'm guilty of all the things. And, for dancers that may have played with that, that shift, what is the answer? Where do you go from, okay, so you're at this plateau. How do you get things back working together and where you need to be for a healthy body to be able to fuel you to get through these crazy dance hours?
Yep. A lot of times, first off, you may have to take a reverse. You're going to notice weight go up. That's going to happen. It's just, if it doesn't, good, great. Chances are it's going to, and that's going to be part of the process. And that's okay. That's your body reestablishing it's safe. It's okay. It has fuel, it has energy, and it may come up. And then what we're going to do is focus on the nutrition. And nutrition is different than dieting. Nutrition is not the same as calories. Nutrition is about food. Calories are about measuring degrees. So now we're going to look at the nutrition you need to support your body and look at, we've talked about those hormones, right? We've talked about cortisol a little bit. What can we do to manage the cortisol? We also need to look at what we're doing with insulin. Insulin is a hormone that drives you. Some people may have heard of anabolic steroids or these things that weightlifters do to build muscle. Well, insulin is anabolic too. It helps to build things up and it helps to move sugar into cells where we need it. Blood sugar, we need that. But what we may need to do is maybe we want to look at how, when that insulin's coming into play, how we're using it, how we're fueling our workouts, what we're doing after the workouts, and are you making sure that actually you're eating in such a way that your mind isn't getting in the way, that you're not, what I see a lot of times happen is people do these restricting things, and restricting turns to binging, and we have a cycle. And so is it really about the calories in, calories out? Maybe. Or is it, I restricted, I lost it, I binged, I felt guilt. I said, I'll start over on Monday. When we started a restrict binge cycle, that's something else that can come into play. So then we end up loading a bunch up. We never really offload as much as we, would like or need to. And that becomes a vicious cycle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Melissa, what are you seeing on the chat? I know that there's a couple things popping in. What are you seeing?
Yeah. I am seeing, so there's a really good question from a young dancer who I'm so proud of for being in the viewership today. She's 13, Caddy is her name, and says when she dances at convention for 6 hours straight with only short meal breaks, usually about 10 or 15 minutes, what do you recommend for her to eat or drink during that 15-minute break to keep her going?
Oh, that's a great question. And conventions can be really hard. So we want to start. So actually with our Caddy, that's a great question. So the first thing we want to do for convention dancers, and really any dancers, any athletes, is we want to start figuring this out at home in the studio before we get to the convention. So one of the things we want to do is we want to start practicing what we're eating. Okay. So I want you to see what feels good to you, because you might find that eating, like, it might be like, oh yeah, all these peas, they're super healthy. But eating this thing of peas because they're super healthy during your 10-minute break may leave you feeling not so super when it's time for you to go on stage, because a little too much fiber, you know what I'm saying? And so maybe that wasn't your best plan. So we want to be really strategic about that. So when you're at a convention, what you may end up doing is planning, it's going to be a day-long event. Okay. And we're going to start that eating by what you're eating in the morning. And so for you, depending on if you're driving, if you're staying at a hotel, we want to practice these things in advance, but you're going to probably eat with breakfast. You're going to want to start, I'm going to show you, I'm going to use this plate as an example. Okay. So on a performance day, depending on what you're looking at, you may divide your plate like this. And this is a high performance day here. And this part is going to be carbs. Isn't your writing upside down? Pretty good, huh? And then we're going to have about a great protein. And then the other part is going to be color. So color is non-starchy fruits and vegetables. So I'll show you this. So that's going to be like grapes and maybe those snap peas or some tomatoes, an orange, berries, all that kind of stuff. Protein is going to be, you can get protein in a lot of foods. If it was breakfast, because you're eating in the morning before your convention, it could be eggs, it could be yogurt, it could be some breakfast sausage, it could be, stuff like that. And then carbs would be what we want, really complex carbs. What complex carbs mean, it means that they're long. They're sugars, but there's so many sugars strung together, it just takes your body a long time to snip them apart. And that means it paces out how much, it just gives you little poofs of sugar throughout your morning, which is what you want. And those complex carbs are going to come, they can be any number of things. I've got some potatoes here. People get all freaked out about white food and potatoes. Don't. It could be oatmeal, it could be crackers, it could be rice. It could be tortillas, it could be some toast, an egg sandwich, it could be any kind of things. So that's where we're going to start. Then while you're at the convention center or wherever you're having the competition, you probably want to pack ahead. One thing I recommend for competition dancers is plan your food. Again, practice these things during your rehearsal schedules when you're at home. See what feels good to your body. So here's something. So I use a lot with all my dancers is bentos. Okay, so you may get a couple different size bentos.
Love these.
Yeah. I use these all the time. This might be, hey, this is going to be a meal bento. If I have half an hour or more, and you might put like a peanut butter and banana sandwich in here. You might put, a little bit of cucumber because it's going to be hydrating and help with hydrating you, and maybe like some tart cherries. I like to actually use frozen fruits and veggies in my bentos because it helps to keep things cold in here. And so maybe that. But I also would recommend that you have a smaller bento where you have little nibbles. These are Kinsho bentos. I'm a huge fan for a number of reasons. One, for dancers, they force variety. You're going to have all these little things because when we see 6 slots, tendency is we're going to put them with 6 different things. We're not going to go celery, 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 right? So this, and when you're at that convention center, it could be, well, think through what you want. Well, what if you want something salty? Well, if you're going to need something salty, maybe it's going to be because you've been sweating a lot. Hey, I'm going to put crackers in there. Maybe you think I really have a difficult time with hydration. So I'm going to put some grapes in there. I'm going to put some pineapple in there because I know that having a little bit of pineapple on board helps with my inflammation. And so I'm going to put some nuts or seeds. You can have cheese is actually can be shelf stable. You could put some cheese wheels in here to have, depending on what you like and what you need, but give yourself a little bit of variety. A lot of competition dancers like to have some bars handy. You can have other things in your bag that don't fit into a bento, or that you could fit into a bento, that are easy to grab, like an orange. So this is going to give you a little bit of that vitamin C, which is going to fuel the adrenal glands that we were talking about earlier. It's going to be pretty easy to eat. And I'm going to show you a little hack on how to do that to make it easy to eat. And it's also going to give you some hydration. Hydration is going to be important. Something that dancers get hung up on. Here's a calorie thing. So they get hung up on only drinking water because we don't want to drink our calories. That's true a lot of the time. But if you're in a competition situation or when you're training, if it's hot and or humid, if you're going to be working for an hour or more, and if you're working hard, you may need more support than what water can give you. And if you notice your feet are crampy, that's where a sports drink can come in really handy. Gatorade's a good one. You can make your own. If you're going to do a pre-done one, I tend to recommend Gatorade. So let me show you what you can do with this orange here. So you take the orange, you got it. If you're traveling to a convention, you've got your mom, you've got you've got maybe a cooler with you, but rather than peeling it and taking the time, you take your orange and you cut the ends off like this, and then you can just give a little slice there, and then you can, it should just unravel. Well, this one's juicy, but then you can go like this and get the sections rather than spending a lot of time peeling it. When you eat your orange, I recommend that you eat the white pith as well. It's got something in it called rutin, and rutin has anti-inflammatory properties. Things that are anti-inflammatory are going to help you recover faster, and they're going to help with your mood.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Mood. If we think about inflammation being fire and hot and those kinds of things, and then your brain is an organ, it's part of that body. And if you imagine it gets inflamed too, you know how bad it feels when you've got an inflamed joint. Well, when your brain gets inflamed, it doesn't work like it should either. So we want to really, if we want to work on our mood and help with anxiety and depression and a lot of those things, keeping our chronic inflammation at bay can be super helpful.
Right. I love what you said about water. That is such a common myth that water is always the best thing. But just to think that there is a time, like you said, when you're hot, when you're going to be doing an hour or more, or when you're going to be working hard. So there's a level of intensity. Water might not actually be your best option.
It may not be for you.
That is a definite learning opportunity. We're getting a whole bunch of likes going off on Facebook right now on that one. So that's a wonderful thing. I want to move on to our next question because I think that it kind of leads into this. I find in my teaching practice and working with students and parents that they can't grasp the concept of food being a building block for energy and strength, and not just a thing you have to do 3 times a day, or you have to understand food as a building block, like something that actually propels you and moves you, and a catalyst. So what are some things that we can say and do as educators that help parents and dancers understand that concept better?
I love, Melissa, that you're using the term building blocks. It is so true. And that's something we're not getting. We hear food is fuel all the time. And it is, but sometimes it drives into that. It's only 3 things, or really 4 things. It's carbs, protein, fat, because those are the energy driving things. And so we forget about the building blocks. It's interesting because a lot of my dancers come to me on referral from physical therapists and orthopedic surgeons because they're not recovering. They've had an injury, or they've had a surgery, and they're not recovering. And so they have to come to me because that's the stopping point. So what we start working on that point is the building blocks to help them to recover. I don't want my dancers coming to me at that end of the stick. Just like with physical therapy, we're seeing prehab as part of the program. If we can bring the nutrition in ahead of time as part of the dance curriculum, which can be hard with dance teachers wear so many hats. Sometimes it can be easier in a company setting, but if we make it part of the curriculum, it can make it easier, because dance teachers oftentimes are business owners. They're in charge of choreography. Their job is to teach technique and those things. And to try and also do the nutrition component may be a little much. What I often suggest to the dance teachers and artistic directors and choreographers I work with is to have a robust set of contacts like a Rolodex with dance specific healthcare providers, physical therapists, trainers, strength trainers, a dietitian or more, mental skills coaches that they can refer out, or that can come to their studio and offer webinars or whatever, because it's a lot easier to prevent this stuff than to deal with being out for 6 weeks, 6 months because of a stress fracture, because you ended up with surgery and you're down for 6 months, and that's no fun.
Right. That is an awesome idea. The kind of the Rolodex or directory of people that can help you in these areas when our heads are all crazy about so many other things, but we can lean on experts who are definitely specialists in areas. So we have a question out there from Gina. What do you recommend dancers eat before class and after?
Oh, that's a great question. So when it comes to what you eat before and after, it's always going to vary. Okay. It depends on the person. So Gina, sounds like you're female. That might be different than if it's a male dancer, right? But generally speaking, it depends on when you're eating before class. So if you're eating 2 or 3 hours before class, or if you're eating 15 minutes before class. So if you're eating a short period of time ahead of class, we want to focus on carbohydrates. So that might be and I like to use carbohydrates that, may come with some fluid or liquid involved too. It can be fruit or veggies, maybe with a little salt, but about 15 grams of carbohydrate. It could be half a bagel. It could be, the crackers, something like that. The farther away from your start time that you're eating, then we're going to bring in more fat and protein and fiber. So the reason for that is sometimes if we eat too much fat or protein before class, fat and protein slow down digestion, which can help us to feel full longer. But if we're going to class and we need to feel really energetic, they may slow us down. And because when that food's in the stomach, the body wants to deal with it, it directs the blood and our energy to the stomach to digest, as opposed to the limbs where we want to be
right
class. So, maybe something simple like a piece of fruit and maybe a little bit of cheese to kind of balance it out a little bit. Maybe some, crackers and peanut butter or apple, maybe a little bit of guacamole and some veggies could be nice. It really depends. If you're going from school to class, you may need to eat a little bit more just for the fact that you haven't eaten since lunch and if you didn't get enough in. So It can vary a bit. It depends on the person. Quantities can go up or down. After class or after training, what we want to do is replenish those muscles. And to do that, here's where that insulin actually comes in again. So we want to get enough protein. The muscles are broken down as soon as we can after class. We want to get some protein on board to help recover. Now, to optimize that, we need some sugar, which we call glucose, to help it out. Insulin, which is that building block, helps to take that sugar and the protein into the cells. So kind of the gold standard in the sports nutrition world, which is actually where dancers fall, would be chocolate milk. That's a good one. You don't have to if you don't do dairy, that's okay. Really, we're looking at getting about maybe 2 grams of protein per kilogram and maybe 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram. Take your weight, divide it by 2. It gets you in the zone. And some added carbohydrate to match that up. It doesn't really have to be, if you're going to be eating a full meal within about half an hour, you don't have to be quite as worried about it. But
so what is the thought on the time of night it is? Because a lot of dancers, I know when I was dancing, it was like this. For my students, it was like this. You know, they're getting done at 9:30 at night. They're getting home. They haven't eaten a really good meal since maybe lunch because they snuck something in between dance and school and dance, and they're really hungry. But then there's a stigma about eating that late at night. What is the rule there? What should we keep in mind with that?
There is eat. Go home and eat. If you have a long car ride home, sometimes that car ride home is just about the amount of time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but your body can rest because you don't feel hungry right after class, right? I mean, it's that idea. The blood and all the energy isn't here, it's out here. Now that we call it that's your sympathetic nervous system. Now your parasympathetic nervous system, that's rest and digest as opposed to fight, flight, dance. You can rest. So when you get home, eat a proper meal. There's nothing about, you are not going to go to bed and all that food is not going to turn to fat. That's not the way it works. It's just not. You are going to be replenishing your body. It's going to help you to sleep better. You absolutely need sleep to recover, to grow. If you're a young person and still growing, we need to pay attention to that. There are a lot of parameters. So go home and eat a proper meal. If your parents have been able to put a dinner for you on a plate or something, do that. If it gets crazy and you need to have something packed away for you, you can do that too. During a standard work week, so now maybe what would that look like? Now we're going to take this plate and we're going to make it look like this. All right. So if you're doing standard training, it's going to be about this much protein, about this much carb. A's are hard upside down, and about this much color. All right. So that's what your plate might look like at home. All right. The color could be like a mixed salad. And I don't have fat on here because we're going to put fat with all our food. Your protein, if you had, say, some chicken thighs or some salmon, it's going to, even some tofu, it's going to have some fat in it. Otherwise, put some sesame oil, some avocado oil. There's going to, the food that'll have some fat in it. Your carbs, maybe it can be potatoes, rice. Try and keep them complex if you can. Add some butter to your potatoes, whatever. And this is going to be maybe a leafy green salad, some berries. I like my dancers to eat tart cherries in the evening. It can help with sleep and it helps with recovery. It can help with muscle recovery and not feeling so sore.
It's so great. Thank you. That's very helpful because it's very different. It's very great to see the plate played out for before your training and after you're done, because they're very different. They look a little bit different. And knowing that you can eat that late at night, I think that makes a lot of people feel better, because I know for me, it's just like, right, I'm not working that kind of schedule right now actively, but when I was, it was like, I shouldn't be eating this late at night, but I really want to, and I'm starving. And it's like that battle in your brain of like, what's the right thing to do?
Yeah. There is no 7 o'clock shut off time. That's nonsense.
Yeah. That's great.
A follow-up question, Kristen, to your tart cherries. So can you do dried tart cherries there? Or even what about, I've seen this before, tart cherry juice. What are the...
Yep, you can do dried cherries. Just keep in mind when you dry things, you take the liquid out. So how many you eat is going to be smaller. You can do the, I use frozen cherries. Okay, you can use these. You can do the tart cherry juice. And even the research shows that Even sweet cherries have benefits, so you can do that. So bring those in afterward. One thing that I'm going to add in for a strategy for my dancers, and this is moving kind of on the more sophisticated level of things, but when we're looking before training, one of the things that I recommend for pretty much all of my dancers is that they incorporate collagen into their diets. We've moved away from, our lives are so much different now than they were 100 years ago, that people don't eat slow cooked meat. We don't have a slow life. So slow cooked foods like meats and things that have a lot of collagen in them that people used to eat regularly just aren't part of our normal diets. And so collagen that we don't eat in terms of tendons and cartilage and animal skins, which a lot of people think, ooh, gross, so they're not getting it. So in terms of recovery and soft tissue health, I might recommend my dancers add gelatin to their bentos. If they're going to have a little snack, maybe they have a bento that they pack. So adding some Jello made with plain gelatin and orange juice, or having a beverage that has some stirred in hydrolyzed collagen can be really supportive.
Thank you so much. That's all so helpful.
Now, you mentioned earlier.
Oh, God.
You mentioned earlier about brain inflammation and how, your joints feel bad when they're inflamed, and the brain is the same way. Can you talk about just briefly about the brain connection to nutrition? Like, a lot of people think about just diet and body image and how much weight you're getting, but there's a connection between what you eat and how your brain functions, right?
A bazillion %. Yes. Here's the thing. Mental health comes from your brain, which is an organ, which is part of your body. What you feed your body, you feed your brain. So the brain and mood have a lot going on. There's the brain itself, which is about 60% fat and needs fat to thrive. So anytime someone's saying low fat, toss out the egg yolks, get rid of the chicken skin, all that stuff, no, that's a bad plan. A lot of people get caught up in egg whites. And in doing so, eggs, so I'm going to use this egg because it has a lot in it. It has something called biotin, it has something called choline, and it has omega-3 fatty acids, all of which live in that fatty yolk. So the fat not only helps nourish the brain itself as a structure, but some of these components actually help with the metabolic processes that go on in the brain. So when people say that they have a chemical disorder or a chemical imbalance for the brain, what does that mean exactly? Where do those chemicals come from? Are we talking about nail polish, or are we talking about hormones and neurotransmitters? We're not talking about nail polish. We're not talking about medication. We're talking about neurotransmitters. We're talking about the structure of the brain and all that stuff. Back to building blocks. You've got to build. What do you build it with? Nutrients. So there are so many things. Number one, you need adequate amounts of fat in your diet, specifically omega-3 fatty acids, which you get in fatty fish, grass-fed dairy products, and pastured eggs, to name a few. You need enough protein in your diet now you've got all the muscles to build the neurotransmitters that do the stuff like dopamine, serotonin, all these things that we hear about. You probably don't, if you have a serotonin deficiency, you probably aren't eating enough to make enough. Something to consider. So let's build up that serotonin. You need specific amino acids to build these certain neurotransmitters. So if you're only getting your protein because you're eating clean from a vegan diet, you may not be getting enough of the right amino acids. Because when people eat clean and vegan, I get this all the time with my dancers, what they may be doing is inadvertently getting rid of the nutrients they need to support their health. You need enough magnesium in your diet. Magnesium is present in over 300 metabolic processes. You need it for your muscles to rest and relax. You need it for your mood. You need enough iron in your diet to support your mood and your brain health. Iron, we can get it in a lot of plant foods, and people who eat a lot of plant foods, which is brilliant and we need them, may eat more iron, but it's harder for our bodies to pull iron out of plant foods than it is out of animal foods. So if you're eliminating animal foods, you may end up with an iron deficiency and not know it. And that can make you tank down. You need it for performance, you need it for mood. So sometimes what we might notice as teachers is, or parents, if we notice a mood affect dropping down, it could be a deficiency in calories, protein, or micronutrients. And if your dancer's starting to eat really clean, make sure they're seeing a professional to make sure that they're clean is actually nourishing them. I see way too many dancers who come to me because they decided to eat super clean and ended up with a health problem.
So so I hear you saying plant-based eating is okay, but be aware that you may experience certain pitfalls and things that you need to pay attention to as an athlete that you need to kind of replenish for yourself if you go that route. Is that correct?
Yeah, and to start with, plant-based doesn't mean vegan. There's some popular documentaries on Netflix, one in particular, that says plant-based is vegan. That's not true. Plant-based means you're eating mostly plants and you have some animal products too. That's a great idea. Plant-based, I'm all about. Vegan, it's possible, but you need to be exceptionally strategic and you probably need to bring some supplemental support in to meet the demands of a dance career.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. So burnout for dancers is a legitimate problem. We talked about that a little bit earlier between school loads, social pressures, schedules for extracurriculars. Take us through an ideal meal plan for a dancer that's dancing, anywhere from 15 to 20 hours a week.
Yep. The first thing we have to do is make it simple. It's got to be simple. It's got to be doable. That's why I like the bentos. Ideal is I would like to see a dancer, because dancers tend to narrow things down. Decide there's one perfect, there's one superfood. What I'd like to see them do is have a lot of color in a bento like this and change it up every day. We can do these ideals with the plates, right? So depending on what your schedule looks like, your plates might look a little different. So on heavy days, on really heavy active days, performing days, heavy rehearsal days, your plate may look like this. On standard training days, your plate may look like this. And on days off, or during periods where you're not working so much, it's kind of loud, then your plate may look like this, where it's going to be this much color, this much protein, and this much carb. Like this. Something that's really important that I talk about with my dancers when we're talking about these bentos is when I was a few years ago, I was really looking for a tool to help dancers, addressing the specific needs of dancers, the mindset of dancers, the perfectionism of dancers, all the things. And bentos aren't new. I didn't invent bentos, but I found this bento and I liked it because it has places for lots of choices. And one of the choices that when I'm talking to my dancers that I recommend is that they keep a hold space. And a hold space is just like a psychological hold space. That's where we stop, and that space is just for you. And a lot of times kids need this. Parents, man, God bless you if your mom's a dietitian, because those people really go the far end. But parents can get a little enthusiastic, and it can drive things the wrong direction. We need our dancers to be able to make choices. We can have all kinds of healthy choices, but it also needs to be, what do I want? So the other day I put up a post about cupcakes, right? It was my birthday. So I chose this as my hold space for a cupcake. Why? Because it just really made me happy. I may or may not, sometimes I just like the way it looks even, but we need to have a hold space. And you might decide, you know what? In my hold space, it's going to be a big day. I'm going to need more energy. I'm going to put, an extra bar in. That may be what you need. You may say, you know what, my hold space, I just kind of want to have some of this, and that's okay. And then you put that in there. You may decide that it's a love note to yourself.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you an honest question. If I'm being honest, my hold space would have a cheeseburger in it. Is that okay?
That's totally fine.
I'm just saying it would.
Totally fine. It's totally fun. And then make sure you've got the other things that are supporting your health. It's not going to fit in this. We're going to have to move you to this size. Well, no.
Like, if you're giving me that kind of freedom, I'm going to put the cheeseburger in there.
And then you go dance.
Totally.
Yep. And then dance and see how you feel about it. And if it's like, that was an awesome idea, it was great. Or maybe that comes on my rest day.
Right.
And because it's like, that was my protein, my carbs, and then I filled my plate with the rest. Pizza, same thing. Pizza's not a cheat food. It's, how does it work in? Well, it's got some protein, it's got some carbs, and then, put some other stuff with your plate. Yeah. So you feel good.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for indulging me on that. Because all of honesty here. So how can studio directors educators and parents help support their dancer, treat their body like the athletes they are. I know, even there's some hesitation with studio directors, not on just this topic, but on so many of the topics that we address about, taking a stand on any of these things with their students, because people go, your job is to teach dance. Your job is not to do anything else. That's the parent's job. There's a lot of discussion about that. Yet this dance educator, the studio director, is an instrumental person in the village for so many of the children that go there. It's a second home. In many cases, they're at that studio more than they're at home. So, what is our responsibility in terms of supporting our dancers? And should dance educators be hesitant to approach nutrition with their dancers?
Well, I think it goes back to that idea of having the Rolodex. And I think if you make it part of your studio culture to have Zooms have become it's the great thing about COVID is distance learning is a thing. You can bring in experts from anywhere in the world to talk to your students. It could be an optional class. It can be, hey, here's a source of resources for you to look at. It can be any number of things. You might want to have a studio protocol that we hope it doesn't get to the point of looking at disordered eating, but you're exactly right, Bree. The dance teacher is going to see things before maybe the parent does. It's not that they're bad parents. It's just dancers are at the studio.
It's the reality. I have had to have some really hard, unpleasant conversations with parents for red flags that I've seen. It's not fun, but I think the stigma is, if I talk to my parent, for those dance studio educators and owners who are being super conscious, if I talk about this, then I'm going to put this on my kids, on my students. And you don't want kids, you want your dancers to be healthy, but you don't want them, putting this mental pressure on themselves that they feel like they have to eat a certain way or eat a certain thing. My issue with my dancers was always, I want them to be healthy and strong and fueled. I know we said that's kind of an old way of talking about it, but I want them to think of fueling their body to get through what they need to do and making sure that they have enough and enough of the right things, versus them thinking, if we're talking nutrition all the time, them thinking, oh, she's talking nutrition because she wants me to lose weight.
Right.
There's that problem, that struggle there.
I'm going to share with you a real life experience. So I am the performance nutritionist for a pre-professional ballet company. And what I've done, not so much this year, but is I come in and I give talks to the dancers. And we have specific talks. We may have one about whether it's nutrients, whether it's stress fractures, weight, eating disorders. And I give the talks, and the artistic director is there because she supports it. And this creates, by the artistic director sitting in that room and I'm there, she supports the science and the knowledge, right? I'm the purveyor of it. I field the questions. I know the stuff. This is how I spend my life, right? So the pressure's off her. If it's a him, it would be him. This example's a her. And then the kids come to me. And when they have questions, they bring them to me, and they bring me some really honest questions, things that they may not feel comfortable bringing to the artistic director or their parents, but they can field them as a general, hey, what about this? And then we can talk about it as a group.
You're like a neutral zone. You're neutral.
I'm totally neutral because I'm not, they don't have anything vested with me. If they do something wrong or there's a threat or concern, casting doesn't matter with me. I'm just Kristen. I'm just the dietitian who they can come to for help and support. The parents know that I'm available for help and support. And so by having that resource, and I've seen this, I have worked with the Ballet Alliance, which is a regional ballet company on the West Coast, and they have a health and wellness committee, physical therapists, alternative strength training, dietitian. This year we were supposed to have mental skills from a dance psychologist. So all these things, it makes it part of the normal culture of dance, that taking care of your body is part of it. Just like if listen, if your kid was going to an NCAA D1 school, I'm going to tell you some of the resources that would be part of their program. They would have food services available in teaching. They would have strength training available. They might have a sleep coach. They might have a recovery coach. They would have a mental skills coach. These things are going to be a standard part of the program. because we treat dance as an art, which it is, and I love it, as opposed to a sport, we tend to poo-poo that stuff. Oh, I don't need it. I'm an artist. Sweetheart, you need it. So parents, teachers, get on board. Parents, if you've got a kid who plays baseball, basketball, soccer, how do you treat that child? We should be looking the same things. But these are skills. These are skills, just like technique that we teach our dancers, because at some point they're going to go away. And what I really worry about for a lot of these dancers is when they go away, like what happened to me? I was fine until I got out, until I hit college. And then my coping mechanisms became what they were, and they weren't good ones. So give them the knowledge. We can start at age 8 easily. Teaching some of these skills. I can teach an 8-year-old how to put a healthy bento together. I can teach an 8-year-old that a hold space is okay. I can teach them to decide, am I hungry for that or not? I can teach them all those things, and we can become very skilled and fine tune and nutrient timing as they get older and more advanced as we go. When we teach these early skills, the rest becomes easy.
I'm going to do that with my 7-year-old. I really am. I'm going to get some and I'm going to do it with him.
It's an easy
Totally. Yeah.
It's the visual that helps. Gina had a question that led me to another question, or Gina had a comment, which I thought was interesting on Facebook Live. She said, I feel like nutrition has become a negative word for dancers. It takes the food out of food and makes it about nutrients and calories and carbs, etc. And when she typed that, which was a great comment, thank you so much, Gina, I thought about what are some of the words that we're using, like fuel, like diet, like more calories in and less calories in and more calories out. Like, what are some of the terms that we're using that might be damaging, and what are some better terms that we can use?
Yeah, one of the terms that I really hate is burn off. I hate that term. I really don't like the term calories. There's certain words in I'll go with a lot of things. I'll flow with a lot of language in my house. But if someone starts talking about calories or burning it off, I want to know what kid they're talking to, because that talk is not acceptable in my house at all. I don't like it. So when we start talking as parents, I'll tell you what, the adults, the number one thing we need to do is, as adults, check ourselves. I just put up a post about what your body, how are you talking to yourself? What's your self-talk? That reflects, we need to work on our self-talk. We need to talk about nourishing ourselves. When I shift the conversation from weight loss to nourishing myself, to taking care of my body and all these, and when I understand what it's doing, when I understand the absolutely overwhelmingly awesome, incredible stuff my body does, I want to give it all the things to support it and help it. And when I look, and sometimes that means, and I want to have some candy too, and that's okay. But bringing it in, that's that function, that's that part of your life, and not building out and culture. Our culture is so important. If we start ruling out Christmas foods or special celebrations or what we do for any of these things that make us who we are, we're going the wrong direction.
Right.
Yeah. Food is not just food, and it certainly is not just calories.
Katie is saying, this is kind of embarrassing, but what causes bloating and how do you avoid it based on the foods that you choose? That's a great question, Katie. It's not embarrassing at all. Totally,
Katie, that is an awesome question. Okay. The answer to that is it depends. It can be a lot of things. The first thing is it's your gut bacteria, most likely. Okay, you got something going on in your gut where you've got either too much of the wrong bacteria or your bacteria is out of sync. So you have 4 or 5 pounds of bacteria in your gut that are working full time for you, including building some of these neurotransmitters we talked about, like serotonin. That's that feel good hormone, right? Neurotransmitter in your gut. So if you're experiencing bloating, it can be several things. One, you may have some what we call dysbiosis going on. So maybe your gut bacteria is off. Why that's happening could be a number of reasons. So sometimes what we do to treat that is we can look and see, do certain foods make it worse? So there's something where for some people, like apples, they eat an apple and they blow up like a balloon. It can be onions, garlic. There are a whole bunch of them. For some people, it's like, I'm fine if I eat 2 slices of apple, but if I eat a whole apple, I go down. So that's something that we can work with, that may be a diet specific thing. Another thing that can be a problem is you're not digesting your food. So if you're huffing your food in, eating too fast, not sitting down. So we're going to take a little second here to talk about mindful eating. Digestion starts in your head. It starts in your head, okay? It starts when you see your food, think about your food, smell your food. The digestive, when you start thinking about food, okay, lemon drops, your mouth might start salivating. If I'm talking debris, cheeseburger, right? Okay, hamburger, all the things. We start here, and that indicates that's our first step, as opposed to stress, where we're going the opposite direction. Ooh, I'm starting to relax. I want to get into eating properly. Then we see the food, we smell the food, we may touch the food. Eating with your hands is actually a really good idea because it brings the food, it gives us a multi sensory experience. Then eventually we're going to actually put this food in our mouth and chew it. You have digestive enzymes in your mouth that start to break the food down right away. If you're slurping your food in, if you're in a hurry and not chewing, one, you haven't broken it down enough, and now it's hitting your stomach in a block. Two, you didn't give that food and those enzymes a chance from your saliva to mix with the food to start breaking it down. So it gets to your stomach, and then it's got to pass your intestine. Well, if it's not broken down enough, well, now it's hit your intestines and those little bacteria, and what it's supposed to do, it can cause some bloating. Okay, so improper chewing and eating can be a cause. If you're taking any sort of antacids, so if you take Tums for calcium, I'd ask you to stop. If you take antacids or proton pump inhibitors because you have an acidic stomach or you get heartburn, that could actually be it. If you're driving down your stomach acid, then you're not going to digest your food properly. You may end up not digesting protein properly, and that can lead to a bunch of actually end up with some mood disorders because now you ate the food, but you can't assimilate it, right? You can't absorb it. You can't get it where it needs to go.
Right.
So those are some of the things. Totally beautiful question.
I feel like we could talk about this like many times. So we're going to definitely have you back and expand on so many of these topics. But what is the one action you want to take? We like to give homework, right? We like to give an actionable item. What is that action that you want our listeners and our viewers to take between now and next week to start making progress in this area? You've given us a lot of resources, a lot of things to think about. What is the biggest thing for you, their homework?
That is such a good one. Okay, if you're an artistic director or a teacher, I would ask you, please never weigh your students. Don't ask weight. If you don't know how to read lab values like hemoglobin, hematocrit, ferritin, then you don't know how to read weight. Kindly don't weigh your students. Don't ask their weight. Don't have it on a contract. Absolutely, emphatically get rid of it. I would beg you to do that. Studios that have done that, I've seen turnarounds in student mood, behavior, retention, health, like you can't believe. Number two, I would ask you to change how you think to yourself. Let's really start with the head. Okay, let's start with the self-talk. Let's change the conversation with ourselves from eating, I'm good because I eat that way, I'm bad because I was so bad. I was so bad. Oh, that's another one. No, you're not bad and the food's not bad. No. We're going to change that self-talk to what can I do to nourish myself? Sometimes I'm nourishing my body. Every once in a while, maybe I'm nourishing my soul with this, right? Maybe it's a cheeseburger. Maybe it's my family, right? So we're going to think about nourishing and how we can change our self-talk and catching ourselves. If you start to have those I'm good, I'm bad thoughts, stop. I don't want you to do that.
And where can everyone find you? You said it's eatwellpros.com, right? Is your website. And you do consultations with studios and with individuals. Like if a parent wanted to contact you, do you do consultations with people like that individually?
I do all the time. And I see clients from New York to California, Florida, Washington, and everywhere in between. So
and do you work virtually? Can you?
I work virtually.
Awesome.
Yep.
So yeah, that's amazing. So for anyone watching this now or later, Kristen Koskinen, she's with Eat Well. She's a registered dietitian, and you can find her at eatwellpros.com. She's challenging us this week to practice mindful eating, which means slowing down, make sure we're chewing our food, Digestion starts in the brain, I heard her say, which is that's a great reminder. And kind self-talk, change the way that we're talking about food and the way we're talking to ourselves about food. She's given great suggestions today about bento boxes, which I am definitely going to get some and practice with my 7-year-old. And there's also a group, Health Made Simple for Dancers. It's a great resource. It's a Facebook group, so check that out. And of course, you can always take the StEPS 2020 initiative. It's a 4-part virtual course series. Nutrition is part of that conversation, and it's free, so there's really no reason not to. But if you go to Instagram at Apollo Performance and click the link in our bio, you can start that course today, again, for free, or you can find it on our website, apolloperformance.com. So we're definitely going to have Kristen back and continue expanding on this conversation, because it's certainly bigger than the time we have today. But definitely check her out at eatwellpros.com.
And Bree, I would say I'm really available and I respond to messages. Find me on Instagram, Kristen_Koskinen_RDN. Follow me there. I talk about bentos. I talk about these things. And yeah.
I love it. Thank you.
So wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kristen. That was, I had a number of light bulb moments. Light bulb moments for me. And I know I'm walking away nourishing my body, nourishing my body. So thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to Bree. Thank you to the viewers who are out there. We had a lot of people hanging out with us here in Facebook Live and hung out the whole time. It was just so interesting. If you want a recording of this episode, if you're on Facebook Live or you're in Zoom, you want a recording of this episode, you can register with us. You can use the Zoom link to register with us. You can still watch us on Facebook Live, but that means you'll get a recording of the episode after it is done. So use that registration link. It's in both of our bios on Instagram at Apollo, as well as at Turning Point Dance Creations. Past episodes are also on IGTV at Apollo Performance on Instagram. So check out all the past, I guess this is our 6th episode. So check out all the past episodes there on IG Live on at Apollo Performance. And join us next Friday. We're here every Friday, 2 p.m. as we answer the question, what do you do when students bring up issues of race in the classroom? We've got Erin Pride with us next week on that 2 p.m. Facebook Live. Yeah, Erin's gonna be awesome. Facebook Live as well as Zoom. Links in the bio at TPDC_ on IG and at Apollo Performance. We're looking for experts for topics for the coming weeks. So if you have a topic that you want, or you feel like there's something that's in your wheelhouse that you definitely want to possibly come on and be a guest to talk about, you can email us at info@apolloperformance.com, or put it in chat or the comments on either one of these platforms, and we would love to reach out to you and have you. So thank you again. Stay on your journey beyond the steps, and we will see you next Friday.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend. Kristen, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
That was awesome. So helpful. Bye, guys.